where a communication is, as it were, merely offensive, grossly offensive, etc., then principles of free speech and free expression require there to be a high threshold and dictate that a prosecution is unlikely to be in the public interest in many of those cases.
The UK has fallen to authoritarianism. Starmageddon has begun. Keir Starmer, democracy harmer. No one is safe. Anyone could be jailed. Don't look at it. Don't even think it, let alone say it. Elon Musk could be going to jail. Rumble CEO Chris Pavlovsky could be going to jail. Some of the deep state resources and AI forces that were monitoring during COVID are now being used to monitor and control you right now. They're looking at the comments. They're looking at what you're saying. They're looking at what you're thinking, and they're going to find ways to criminalize you. The UK is obviously at the vanguard, the new frontier of global authoritarianism, but this is, of course, by its very nature, not a phenomena limited to the United Kingdom. We saw how Australia behaved during the pandemic, setting up what some would regard as internment camps. We saw how Canada behaved during the pandemic, the control of people's finances, the shutting down of bank accounts, the vilification of the truckers. And now the UK has moved to the vanguard. Do you sometimes think, Americans, that the ancillary nations that share your language, and in our case gave you it, are used to pilot new modalities and methods that will ultimately be deployed in your country if you don't keep hold of the means to defend yourself? For surely we appear to be in a revolutionary moment, and the globalists have got the reins. If we don't find ways of uniting, ways of overcoming our superficial differences, ways of coming to consensus and agreement around the most contentious issues, we will be damned and we will fall. Surely we mustn't lose our sense of humour, because in times like these, even looking at a riot is enough to get you in trouble. If you watch the riot from the sideline, you will be refused bail. So if someone riots near you, you look away. We were told you're not meant to cross by on the other side. That's the message of the Good Samaritan. Get on that other side and shut your eyes. If someone starts rioting, cover your face. Get on your knees. It's over, baby, in the UK. You could be a tech oligarch, or you could be a person who just happens to glance across a riot. I don't know. Maybe your ball rolled across the street, or an apple if you dropped a shopping bag. Don't follow its pathway, because if there's a riot or disturbance over there, if there's something over there that the authoritarians don't like, you will be in serious trouble. Was it ever thus? What happened to the wide-eyed idealist Keir Starmer, who, when head of the CPS, that's like being our Attorney General for the whole country, believed in free speech, believed in the right for people to speak freely and openly, to, in the marketplace of ideas, come to some sort of unity and unison, to acknowledge that there are many ways to be human and many ways for us to align and ally and oppose authority. What happened to the guy that said that too many Twitter prosecutions could damage free speech? That guy is long since perished, and he's been replaced by a new authoritarian. But that's the nature of globalism. It's not a condemnation or criticism of the individual. You can see when you watch Keir Starmer talk when he was head of the Crown Prosecution Service, that's the head of our legal system in the UK, that he has a brilliant legal mind. But like many globalist figures, they can become co-opted. They indeed must be co-opted. They are ultimately vassals of a less clear but still discernible global force. Why do you think across the world farmers are protesting? Could it be that there are some centralized edicts that are playing out so that food could be controlled? Why do you think censorship is being discussed everywhere? Of course, it's a response to a truly global phenomena like the internet, where immediate global communication is a possibility. But more importantly, it's a response to the potential that the ability to communicate grants us with. We can no longer be lied to in the same way. Of course, there's disinformation, malinformation, misinformation. Of course, people post dumb stuff, felonious, erroneous erroneous and untrue stuff on the internet. But what we ought be granted, and what we indeed ought demand, is the right to decide for ourselves what we believe to be true. And the more power we grant to already authoritarian systems, the less likely we'll be able to complain about it in the future. Here's Keir Starmer way back when, talking about the importance of free speech, which you'll remember. Do you remember? Do you remember? Because it may only be 6 weeks ago, but it might be 10 billion megabytes ago, because time now is not measured by the clock, but by the freight and weight of information. That once it was the left that cared about civil rights, once it was the left that cared about freedom, once it was the left that cared that there would be no more war. Well, that ain't the case. Not no more. Here's Keir Starmer talking about free speech maybe 10 years, but a million lifetimes ago.
Where a communication is, as it were, merely offensive, grossly offensive, etc., then principles of free speech and free expression require there to be a high threshold and dictate that a prosecution is unlikely to be in the public interest in many of those cases.
And the factors which will suggest people might not be prosecuted include things like deleting it quickly if you've sobered up in the morning. Can you explain about that?
One thing that's very important in this area is that where free speech protects the subject matter, a prosecution must be proportionate. And when considering whether a prosecution is proportionate, the question of whether a communication is removed quickly, whether the individual expresses remorse, whether access to the communication is blocked, these are obviously relevant to any assessment of proportionality.
And will it be more or less likely for individuals to be prosecuted criminally now when they're using Twitter or Facebook, do you think?
It's not possible to say whether it's more or less likely. There simply haven't been enough cases. But this is clearly signalling that in those cases that are protected by freedom of expression, then there's a double safeguard, a high threshold, and consideration of the public interest before a prosecution will be brought.
Now, that's a man that you might disagree with. That is a clear legal mind. It's a systemic mind. It's a well-educated mind. And we have to say, that's the mind of a self-made man. It's not an autodidact. He's highly, highly educated, but he comes from a humble background. Now, the same as someone like Gavin Newsom, I would contest, or Kamala Harris, this is a person that is ultimately a vassal for state and globalist power. This man here is talking about the importance of free speech, proportionality, redemption, remorse, conversation, openness. What happens to them? What are they plugged into when they get into government? Do you imagine for a moment that a different leader in our nation would have a different policy? Are you that naive? Rishi Sunak would be the same. Almost any leader would be the same. These centralized systems are in place to ensure that the systems remain preserved. They are there as the throne and enthroning of authority. So the individual is not what's significant. You can see there some time ago he had different principles, and we can see now that his principles are in alignment with the interests of the powerful. And if they weren't, he wouldn't be sitting in that chair. We can't continue to bring you this beautiful content without the support of our partners. Fume, delicious Fume. My favorite flavor is orange vanilla. All the flavors are non-toxic, bit like herbal teas. That's my favorite one there, orange vanilla. This alternative helps you kick your bad habit in an enjoyable way without nicotine. Fume don't just serve you or me, but 300,000 customers. You can be their next success story. For a limited time, use my code RussellBrand for your free topper, the perfect accessory to your Fume device. Slip it onto the mouthpiece for a softer, warmer feel. Grow up. It's chewable for those of you who like to fidget orally, and reusable. How many things can you say that about? Chewable, but also reusable. Head to tryfume.com. That's try F-U-M. Use the code RussellBrand, 2 S's and 2 L's, or scan the QR code on your screen right now to get your free Fume topper when you order your journey pack today. Chewable Fume. It's the age we live in, baby. Thank you, Fume, for sponsoring this video. Here's Robert Malone, who made his bones in COVID after he came up or significantly contributed to mRNA technology, and then was sort of somewhat hysterically adjudged to be anti-vax when he himself invented forms of vaccines. The UK is under a totalitarian regime. It has fallen to tyranny under Keir Starmer. One former member of parliament told me this morning, Andrew Bridgen surely, that close to 1,000 arrests have been made for sharing online posts in the last week. The same MP advised me that even a stopover through Heathrow isn't safe for Americans who have spoken out about immigration issues. One key aspect that makes this apparent crackdown on social media particularly shocking to critics is the British government is threatening to extradite American citizens from the US to be jailed in the UK for violating their rules about political speech online. Now, even that, and then he says, Britain is now under siege. You can see the thumbnail now, baby. Britain is under siege. But even that is not unprecedented, because you remember just a couple of weeks ago, Australia was saying, oh, because people might use X with a VPN, we should have the right to arrest people abroad. This is how globalism has to ultimately play out. You can't respect sovereignty, not of the individual and not of the nation, not of ideas, not of discourse. It demands absolute power, whether it's in the form of Keir Starmer, a once brilliant young litigator, Kamala Harris, whether you love her or loathe her, and I know you loathe her because you're watching this kind of media. She was once a brilliant attorney or a hustler, or however she made her bones. I don't know. We make our way through life in all sorts of peculiar fashions. Ultimately, though, they have been co-opted by a system that will use them for as long as they have some utility and will discard and dispatch them whenever it is necessary. What is our duty? To remain optimistic, to remain awakened, to refuse to hate, to refuse to be violent, to refuse to attack one another, to refuse to burn down buildings, but to become unified in absolute light. Can you imagine their ontological terror when one day, in spite of our many obvious differences, we are able to stand together regardless of our political or religious affiliations and demand the right for individual autonomy and community autonomy? We will then be able to resolve whatever disputes we have around sovereignty and culture truly democratically among one another. As long as the serpent's head remains engaged, we are doomed. And as long as we remain in endless pirouettes of circular and senseless dispute with one another, we are malleable. We are fools. We are exactly as they would have us. While we're reflexively posting hate online, they've got us where they want us. When we are chanting hateful rhetoric about people because of their race or religion, they've got us where they want us. When we are condemning people because of their class, their education, or their poverty, when we are objectifying one another, we are exactly where they want us. We have a demand upon us heavier than it has ever yet been to awaken and become enlightened right now. Otherwise, we're in trouble just for watching things on the sidelines. I don't even know where the sidelines are. Let me just look at that again. Did you watch that on the sideline? I didn't know that was a sideline. I didn't know that the sideline was illegal time. You're on the sidelines. You were looking at a riot. Go to prison. Do not pass go. Do not collect £200 and get a bloody vaccine and get your umpteenth booster shot. You could get yourself a cough, couldn't you? Okay. Let's have a look at how they're handling this stuff. Secretive COVID-era spy agency brought in to monitor social media during riots. I am personally familiar with these AI organizations that are government-funded that surveil social media in order to accumulate information that they can utilize, amplify, de-amplify, or deploy. This is the game now. And it's a game that's going to affect all of us. So don't be excited if authoritarianism temporarily goes your way. My side won. It's my side that's using this authority. Well, let's hope that it remains your side if laws are passed that grant this kind of staggering power to despotic individuals or a despotic system. Forget the individuals. The individuals ain't relevant. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.